modern fatherhood is I want to share equally in how I raise this child and look around and suddenly go, I have absolutely no role models to figure out how to do this. I didn't have to get past this idealized view of perfect dad, perfect parent. I could move right into what the F am I doing wrong and how do I figure this out?
Jeff Hittner built a career teaching executives how to lead in the workplace. But when he became a dad, he realized applying the same leadership skills at home was much harder.
If you're growing in your work, whatever business or organization with, you have a strategic plan, you have a vision, you have a mission, and then you go home and you have none of these things, you're completely reactive.
With his Ambitious Dads podcast and coaching programs, Jeff is teaching the next generation how to be better leaders and dads.
I just assumed if I had love in my heart, that was all it was going to take. And it takes a whole hell of a lot more to be a great dad.
Where you are now as a father with two boys living in Spain, if you go back to younger you, would you, what vision, if any, did you have of you as a father? And did it resemble what it looks like now in any way?
Well, I guess the short answer is yes and no. I always wanted to imagine being a great dad, but the journey to getting here was so surprisingly complicated, because I think like most of us, whether we're mothers or fathers, we discover that being good at the most important role we'll ever have is not designed to come naturally. We actually have to learn a great deal and grow a great deal. And for me in particular, this journey has been very unique because about 11 years ago, after wanting to be a dad my entire life, I found out that I couldn't be a biological dad. And it was a very long and, as you would imagine, grief-filled process that I went through with my wife. And when we got through it and decided on the kind of the alternative way that we wanted to start our family, it became even more important to me to father with intention is the way I like to talk about it. But the problem is I still had way more to learn than saying that this is so important to me, because now the only, for me to leave a mark on my children, it's 100% about nurture, right? It's never going to be about nature. And I had this realization, which really drove a lot of how hard of an effort I put into my fatherhood. But yet what I didn't understand was how triggered I was going to be at the early part of my fatherhood, and how much of the emotional dysregulation that my kids had. And I would probably define both of them as deeply feeling kids. And realizing how hard it was for me to sit with that, and all the things that it was putting me through, and how poorly I was at managing it, and going through the process of learning and growing and getting better at all of that has been just a journey of journeys. And so when you ask, did I imagine being a father here? The answer is no, because I didn't imagine fatherhood in any way, shape, or form being as as much of a learning journey as it has been. And I just assumed if I had love in my heart, that was all it was going to take. And it takes a whole hell of a lot more to be a great dad. And the thing about Spain is, like I said, I have the space to do that, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. And I want to go back to something that you said. When you said you knew you wanted to be a dad your whole life, do you know where that comes from? What put that on your radar so young?
To be honest, I just love to take care of people. I think there are many of us out there. There are many caregivers in the world, and there are many that are men. It's just not spoken up enough. I certainly have the majority of my dearest friends are as focused on being caregivers and living their dream of being a dad as well. So I just remember, like in high school, when I would have a crush on someone, thinking like, "Oh, would they be a good mom?" And being in my head, it was like, I wonder if other guys think this. Well, I'm not going to ask, but and yeah, so that's kind of the way it's been for me.
It's interesting. I mean, do you have siblings? What's your birth order, if so?
Yeah, I'm the oldest. I have
Mm.
a younger sister. She's 4 years younger. She's a pediatrician and lives in Boston. Um, and yeah, and I will tell you also that I had my childhood was okay. It was better than okay. I mean, I come from a pretty upper middle class family, but I was an elite gymnast. I was a gymnast for 15 years, and I missed out on a lot of my childhood because I was training 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I was pretty isolated. Like I took all of those fears that we normally um, like properly go through as teenagers, or just around relationships with our peers, around dating, and I just like avoided them and just focused on gymnastics.
Mm.
And I think that that's another big piece of just this longing that I had for the whole of my life to really like care for and experience like family in a different way.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it's interesting when we go back to our roots and kind of look at the pieces that really informed our dreams and our decisions, our choices. Um, I mean, it's been funny for me as an adult and especially as a mom to find those pieces from my childhood. Very recently, I started watching Little House on the Prairie with my niece.
Hmm?
I have a 10-year-old niece, and I hadn't watched that show since I was a very little girl, and but I knew I had loved it, and I never really talked about it because it's not exactly like, it's not the coolest show. And not very many people seem to bond over Little House on the Prairie, but I started watching it with my niece, and so much started to come back. And what I realized is, I was a huge couch potato as a kid. I watched a lot of TV. Like I could, if there was a game show about 70s and 80s television trivia, like I would win. I would be the winner. I would be the champion. And um, and we were watching Little House on the Prairie, and what I realized is that show, I think, was the first show where I started sort of living vicariously through a
Hmm.
family, through a fictional family. And as I'm watching, it's so nostalgic. But Michael Landon, who not only starred in that show, but also produced and directed, Jason Bateman's been talking about him a lot lately because Jason Bateman started his career on Little House on the Prairie.
I don't think I
And
knew that.
um, and he said he wanted to become a director because of how impactful Michael Landon was in his life. And so it was this male figure, and there was so much about that show that it was, Michael Landon showed up, and this is going to tie into our conversation and the work that you do. But I think he was such a father figure. He was a father figure on that show for the cast. He was a father figure, I think, for so many kids and people like me who were watching and didn't have that example in their own life of what fatherhood could be. Um, and so, for me, he was just, yeah, like I was like, dads like that exist? Like I mean, I think it gave me this like, is that even possible? I think it's possible. Half Pint has a dad like I couldn't believe it.
Hmm.
which I showed it to my 24-year-old daughter recently. She started watching it with me and she loved it. She was like, she has a serious boyfriend. She's like, I mean, if he wants to be a contender to marry me, he's going to have to learn how to play the fiddle. That's it. Hands down. My husband's going to need to play the fiddle. Um, but yeah, so I guess, so many times I think we're driven to this work that we do or this thing that we feel so passionate about. A lot of times I think it is from the holes in our own childhood, um, and things that impacted us. And I guess I was curious about like this desire for fatherhood. I just don't hear this. I hear a lot of husbands who want to be dads, but like they're not passionate about it like you are. So I guess I was curious about that.
Well, I would like to say that I've heard from lots of dads that are.
Hmm.
And I think the story needs to change. I think we all hear what we sort of presume to be the truth about men and fathers at this point. And there's a lot of the conversation is finally just starting, but it's long overdue. But, for me, this is modern fatherhood, which is to say, like, modern fatherhood is I want to share like equally in how I raise this child and look around and suddenly go, I have absolutely no role models to figure out how to do this. And I have no role models because we can say that our fathers were good in the context of how they expected to be dads, but it's not the same way that we want to father. And so figuring this out is really difficult. But there's a lot of good data out there that says, over 90% of men identify primarily, the ones that have kids identify primarily as fathers. That's their number one identity. It's basically the same as moms. But then where the data gets different is that only about a third of dads actually think they're doing an okay job at it, which means like 2/3 of us are walking around feeling shame and like anxiety around the thing that is most important to who we are. And by the way, it's not good for men to be walking around with shame because it can project in lots of bad ways, lots of unhealthy ways, but it can also project in ways where it's like, I'm going to figure this out. And that's what I'm trying to do with the work I do. Um, yeah.
Yeah. So I know that your work involves identifying these 6 fatherhood gaps.
Yeah.
And I would love, and I'm sure my audience would love to know more about that. Like, teach us. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, so I'm a leadership expert and an executive coach, and about 2 or 3 years ago, I like kind of my biggest client rolled off, which is normal when you're working with a team and a leader for a while. I had this space to think. Again, what only happens, I feel like, in Spain that I could do, and I just started asking this question: why, when I am talking with executives and their men, it's so easy for them to tell me about their career goals, the way they want to run their teams or their companies. But when I ask them about like their vision for how they want to father or how they want to parent, they look at me with this blank face. And I coach CEOs that are women all the time as well. And I wasn't noticing that same challenge. And I got really curious about it. And it was also around the same time where I was having lots of challenges as a dad with my kids' temper tantrums, which were lasting, way past the 5, 10, 15-minute mark, right? And I could only hang in there for 2 or 3 minutes before like losing it myself. And so I decided, you know what? I don't know what this is, but I'm really curious. So I'm going to start interviewing what I called ambitious dads. And my goal at first was to interview 50 ambitious dads. I'm now north of 200. But at like interview number 4, I was like, holy, like there, I am learning so much, and I've only interviewed 4 dads. Like, I need to start doing something with this. So I started a Substack. I started blogging on it, and now it's almost been a couple of years, and so I've been building programs around it. But what I've discovered in having these conversations is Well, a lot. And the biggest one is that we have these six big gaps that we sit with as men, as dads. The first one is the time gap, which I know all women can relate to. It's like this work-life balance gap. And it feels so difficult because we feel like we're never enough on either of the things that are important to us. But the distinction between dads and moms is moms haven't figured out how to deal with it. No one has an answer to how to deal with it. But what they have done is figure out how to talk about it. They can talk to each other about it, and dads don't. And that's the other gap, of the six. I call it the brotherhood gap. We're not having these conversations with other fathers, and in fact, oftentimes there'll be this like little press blitz around someone who started this fatherhood group in a big city, and they all get together, and but they're not having the conversations. They're not having these conversations around like, hey, this is what's keeping me up at night around my kids. Like, are you going through this too? Or like, have you had this experience? So we've got this gap around like work life balance. We've got this gap around brotherhood, around connecting with other dads. Then there's this confidence gap that I mentioned. Um, and then there's what I call the legacy gap, which is where we're spending all this time reacting and not enough time like really both planning and imagining, like incorporating our values and the way we want to father into like the experience of fatherhood. And then we've got the co-parenting gap. And that's
That's
the,
that's a big one. That's a
yeah,
big one.
and I have learned some really interesting things around. I mean, it's something like 70% of parents that are married come from different cultural backgrounds, right? And that could be as simple as like, you know, Catholic Italian and like, I don't know, Irish, whatever. Or it could be like an Indian background and a European background. It could be whatever. But the challenge is that we have these different family like anchors as to what we think parenting should be, and they're not naturally aligned all the time. And in fact, primarily they're not aligned from the work that I've been doing. And so, you know, we discover that I have this great experience with my wife where she grew up and her parents were very hippy dippy, and they never had like sugar in the house, right? No candy, no sugar. Whereas I grew up and my mom was like quintessential, would buy like the store bought like a cupcake mix and the store bought icing, and I had nothing but like kind of the worst of Americana foods and like, artificial ingredients. And so we have our children, and every time my wife wants to show love, she wants to give them treats. And whenever I want to show them love, I want to buy them fruit. And like, and we're butting heads. We're butting heads. And it's not until we have this conversation about where this originates that we discover that like this is what the challenge is. It's like we're both trying to do we both had this experience in our childhood, and we want to do the opposite,
Mm.
right? And just by having some simple conversations around topics like that, like what was something you absolutely adored in your childhood and want to bring to like your family and the way you raise your kids? What was something that you abhorred from your childhood and never want to let happen? Even though that conversation seems so simple to have, we don't have it. And then we just like run into this challenge. Like my wife and I constantly getting angry about this until somehow we figured it out together. So there's this big co-parenting gap, and part of it is can be simplified into asking the right questions, but part of it is a lot more complex. Comes from cultural upbringing. My wife's mom and dad were not happy with the fact that I didn't want to work 5 days a week and wanted to take Fridays and spend the time taking care of my toddler son because I had my own business and I could do that. They didn't understand it. They didn't want their daughter working 4 or 5 days a week. They wanted her with the child all the time because they were from that generation, right? So there was getting through that. And then the other gap that I think I already mentioned was the role model gap. We don't have role models to be the types of dads we want to be. So it's the time gap, the role model gap, the confidence gap, it's the brotherhood gap, and it's the legacy gap. And those are really, and the co-parenting gap. And those are the things that really kind of popped out in all of my interviews with all these dads. And now I build programs to kind of solve for them as best I can. And it's been going well.
That's amazing. I would love for you to go deeper into the confidence gap.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, the confidence gap also has a lot to do with, I'll talk about my personal experience, right? So, why, when my toddler is having this 10-minute meltdown, is it making me feel like the worst dad in the world? And why is it making me lose all my emotional control as well, right? My own emotional dysregulation. It turns out it's probably because I wasn't allowed to fully share and voice my emotions when I was young, right? I'm in particular because I'm a guy, right? And so this confidence gap comes from this reality that we haven't really developed all the skills for our own emotional regulation as dads, most of us. And part of that journey, probably the hardest part of that journey, is coming up as we start fathering and we get all these new triggers that we never experienced necessarily in our relationships. Because we didn't have this intensity of like, this is this little human that I care more than anything about. And like, I don't know how to manage all these feelings that are going through me. And at the same time, I don't have the examples of how to manage something that I don't understand that they're going through. And so this confidence gap is like sort of this vicious cycle of all these feelings that dads are going through. And these feelings are like, oh my God, I'm not quite sure how to do this well, but I really want to. And the challenge there is, I'm not sure how to do this well. I really want to. What does the dad do?
Mm.
And a lot of times, again, if you think back to all these different gaps, they don't know what to do because they don't have other people to talk to about it. They definitely like don't know how to manage it themselves. Most of them aren't like on social media, like listening to Dr. Becky talk about like all the best strategies for parenting. And so they're just sitting in this sort of shame spiral in relation to how they want to be a better dad, but don't really know what to do next. And it's a big one. And it was definitely the biggest one for me. I have two boys, and I remember um, like they fought all the time. They still fight a lot. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? These boys just won't stop fighting. And I start doing these interviews with all these other dads, and the ones that had boys, I was like, do your boys fight a lot? And they're like, oh my God, they fight constantly. And by the way, I was one of three boy siblings, and me and my brothers fought all the time. And I'm like, oh, really? And like, what's your relationship with them now? And they'd be like, oh, we're super close. And I would be like, I just carried this anxiety and shame about like I'm doing something wrong as a dad because my boys are fighting because I didn't have the wherewithal to ask any other dads about this. And as soon as I started doing it for my interviews, like my anxiety level went way down. It's like, oh, boys fight. Like this is how this normal part of boy toddlerdom. And it just made it so much easier for me. And this is the example, like this confidence gap comes with a distinct set of bad coping skills that we have around learning what's normal, what we need to do to improve, all sorts of stuff like that.
You have to do this behind the scenes work. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're taking dads through to really figure out like what's coming up for me. And like I love the part of like talking to other dads. And I would say it's not just boys who fight. Because I have two boys and a girl, and I like to say we defy gender roles in our family. Like she was the fiercest, most athletic, competitive. And my boys, like, they played sports, but they didn't have the kill instinct.
Hmm.
So that she went to college, and the guys across the street had a bunch of Nerf guns, and they would do these Nerf gun wars. And she was like, they were like, why are you so good at Nerf guns? Like, this is weird, because she doesn't look like she grew up. She doesn't look tomboyish. She looks pretty feminine. And she's like, I had two brothers. Like, this is what we did. This is how we played. And it was vicious. But, you know, it's also like, if you watch videos of other pack animals, like, what do puppies do?
Yeah.
What do kitties do? Like, they are wrestling, they are rough and tumble. Like, that is a form of play. So even fighting, I mean, it's hard to live with people. Of course, we're going to get on each other's nerves. I mean, the conflict resolution, I think most of us as adults are like, conflict resolution, I just avoid conflict. So when our kids are fighting, it really is their way of saying, I'm trying to figure out how to coexist with the other people in this family. I'm trying to figure out how to navigate conflict when I wanted something to happen and it's not happening. And adults, I would love for you to be able to help me learn these skills. But
Yeah.
if we're in the gap and we're taking it personally and we're thinking they're fighting means I'm doing something wrong, this is about me, not about
Yes.
them, right?
Yes.
So,
A hundred
yeah,
percent. 100%. And, you know, and for us, like, it was no coincidence that the first thing we got good at was repair, right?
yeah,
Because I would learn all the techniques, but I would, of course, like, still, you know, maybe it went from screwing up 90% of the time down to 80, down to 70. And our family is wonderfully good at repairing. And, you know, but yes, when we are triggered, like, if the lizard part of our brain is taking over in that moment, we cannot take in all of the, like, memorized learnings of you, of Dr. Becky, of all the folks that have these great strategies for how to approach the situation. And so, yeah, and you've got this, like, this spiral that is, I think, again, both parents can relate, but it's the management of this sort of shame spiral that is very difficult for dads in a very different way, and requires, in my experience so far, a very different touch.
I agree.
Um, yeah.
I know, I completely agree. I like to say my community is a community of moms and a few super cool dads. Um, because you really have to be a feminist to come into a group, a feminist man to come into a group of women and to be willing to be vulnerable. And and so and I've tried to do groups with just some of the dads in my community. Um, it they need, I feel like they need a man who can truly relate, for a variety of reasons. And sometimes I have great private coaching sessions. I love men. I do. I love men, but I think there is something about that, the brotherhood gap that you touched on, that, like, that is so beautiful to me, because that's what I've experienced in my community is we have a sisterhood, and like, it's truth telling, and it's not performative, and there's no bullshit, and nobody's competing, and nobody's trying to be my teacher's pet. Like, it is a sisterhood, truly. And I'm pretty fierce as a leader, that I make sure that everyone knows they have a place at the table. And I mean, I run my work community and my work family the way I do my home family. And I use a term called pack leadership, where this is your pack, and every pack needs leaders, that helps the pack to feel safe and contained. And everybody gets to be seen as an individual. And so I have really been looking for a resource because I come across so many amazing men, but this doesn't seem to be a conversation that men are having with each other. And I think it's just so needed.
Thank you. And yes, I couldn't agree more, obviously. And, I think it requires a different metaphor because just the way we've been raised. And so for me, I often talk about like, you know, you're, if you're growing in your work, like wherever, whatever business or organization with, you have a strategic plan, you have a vision, you have a mission, and then you go home and you have none of these things. Like you're completely reactive. You haven't done any research. You haven't done any of that stuff. And so I run this 12-week, I call it the Founding Fathers program. And the big goal is to create what we call your fatherhood philosophy.
Mm.
And it's really about like figuring out, like looking at the forest through the trees and figuring out, how do I want to show up as a dad? Now, of course, that doesn't mean, as you create this philosophy, you're going to show up in those moments that you are triggered and immediately reactive. But it doesn't, but that's how kind of growth happens. It's over time. And it's understanding like, you know what, like if I'm going to set myself up to have fewer of these triggering moments with my kids, I need to be building something with them and not just reacting. And so this idea of creating a fatherhood philosophy, this idea we create new traditions, part of our program is like, what new traditions do you want to build as you've defined like the values that are important to you to instill in your kids. We talk a lot about like creating a definition of what's your primary role as a dad for each age of the child, and like building that into the conversation with your kids. I with mine, for instance, up until they were, say, 4 or 5, I would let them know my primary role as a dad is to keep you safe, and I want you to know that. And so whenever they were doing something and I had to say no, and you know how much little kids hate when you say no, I would say, "What's my primary job?" And they'd be like, "To keep us safe." And I'd be like, "Exactly. So that's why I'm saying no." And it would end the argument. Now, that only happened because I had kind of developed this philosophy of that. And now as they're older, I've changed. I said, what's my primary role as a dad now? My sons are 5 and 8, and it's my primary role is to help you grow and learn and be challenged in new ways. And so I can use that when again a no comes up or an argument comes up, and it just, we, as I'm sure you talk about all the time, it creates boundaries and guardrails, which are so important, and it creates so much more connection as a result. And these are the things that dads need to think about through our own language, which is part of what I'm explaining right now. And it's been an incredible journey for the dads that have gone through this program so far. And I'm really excited to have more fathers hear about this, because there's not a dad that I speak to when I get them to be vulnerable with me that don't share that they want to do so many things differently.
So I love this quote: the way you do anything's the way you do everything. And I often tell my moms, and I've had lots of moms who they've gone on to change careers, start businesses, do a lot of cool things out in the world. And I often coach them on those things, but I say, we're going to start with the foundation, which is your family, which is your home life, and truly create a cohesive team. And and when you feel like that foundation is solid, you're going to take everything you've been practicing, because guess what, kids, and especially little kids, give you an opportunity to practice skills like having productive conversations. That's what you do when you have that repair conversation when things have gone sideways, because it's hard to live with people. So of course things are going to go sideways. Of course we're going to co-regulate with each other and become dysregulated at times, and we're going to say things we wish we hadn't said. And I had a psychologist on the podcast last year, and she gave this statistic that I find myself repeating so often, which is, she's like, the best parents get it right 30% of the time. She's like, really? She goes, because the beauty, and she didn't say exactly like this, but this is how I've iterated it. The real beauty, the true connection happens. It's what separates us from AI. It's the imperfections. It's the way we come back together and we own what our role was, and we have an honest conversation, and everybody gets to show up with some humility, and our kids get to see a side of us, which is, oh, mom and dad are human too. Like, that probably felt scary when I yelled like that. Probably startled you. No, it didn't feel scary. Okay, well, how did it feel? You're right. Now, all of a sudden, we're having this conversation where our kid gets to tell us how they actually felt. And we get to say, ooh, I'm really sorry. Yeah. I don't know what monster took over my body, but something did. Maybe mom needs to go to bed a little early tonight. Maybe I'm needing a little extra sleep. Maybe cause that was not my proudest moment. I'm really sorry for scaring you. Like, I don't know about you, but growing up, I can't imagine my parents apologizing for, and like they would, that wasn't part of, that wasn't, I don't think that was, I think that would have been considered being a bad parent, because how can they respect you if you're always walking around apologizing to them? Yesteryear would have thought you were giving away your authority. That was the
Mhm.
opposite of leadership. And what we know now is, no, that's effective leadership. And so you're going to practice all these skills, and you're going to have a lot of opportunities to practice them. And then you're going to take those skills to your work family, to your friends, to your family of origin, and you're going to use those skills out in your life beyond your family. Like, it really, to me, is all about leadership. And then, of course, you're going to show up differently in all the areas of your life.
Absolutely. I tell the story of, my kids were asleep in the car driving back from a nice beach. And I was like, I'm going to put on a podcast episode of a parenting one. And it was actually, uh, well, it was just an interesting podcast about how to be a better parent. And I looked in the rearview mirror, and my son was awake. My oldest was awake. And I was like, are you listening to this? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, well, what do you think it's about? And he goes, I think it's about how to be a better dad. And I seized on it, and I was like, that's exactly what it's about, because like I can always be better at this thing that I care about more than anything. And I, to this day, like tell him what I'm working on. So both of my kids know that I am working on being more patient with them. And so when I'm apologizing, like they will repeat to me, I know, Dad, like you're still working, you're still working on it. And I'll be like, yeah. But then it also introduces the next part of the conversation. Like, what are you working on right now?
Mm.
And so we have this very open conversation in our family that's all about like growing and learning all the time, because like the repair has moved kind of to the next level. It's like now everyone knows what everyone's working on, and let's have conversations about it. And another time, this started about like 5 or 6 weeks ago. My youngest, he started putting his hands over his ears, and I was like, oh God, like this feels like something new. What is going on? And of course, it would happen after I would like run into the room because someone was crying, they were screaming, right? So I do a pretty good job at this point of like letting the arguments like play out until there's an injury, because I do want them to learn how to like manage this relationship with each other. So I come in, arms over his ears, and I'm like, shoot, this is like the third time. And I'm just thinking about it, and I'm like, I'm about to do some research on it. And I as I said, I'm a leadership expert. I coach on like leadership, and I was like, wait a minute. This is just like what I teach around giving feedback. Like in a professional setting, I say, before you give feedback, you always need to ask, is this an okay time to have a conversation? And if they say no, that's actually good, because even if you think it's important and you try to give them the feedback, they're not going to hear it, right? Because their amygdala will have hijacked the whole thing, and it's no good. And I was suddenly like, aha, my son is giving me the gift of gifts. He is telling me when he puts his hands over his ears, there is nothing I can teach him in that moment, like zero. And so he does it. And I am like totally happy with it now. Instead of being scared by it, I am happy with it because I know it's just like, okay, I have to come back to this in like 20 minutes and have the conversation about what he needed to do differently.
I
And
mean, he's like your personal trainer
it's
because
amazing.
it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, that's a visual cue. And a little kid that is like at that place where it's like system overload and they're on the verge of a meltdown or a neuro crash, um, like any extra input is just going to overwhelm their system more. So that is unbelievable that he also is being that resourceful to take out, like he's like the words or any extra noise, like it's going to be too much for my system. So I'm going to take matters into my own hands here and put my hands over my ears. Like that's unbelievable.
But this is what's so amazing about it too is that again, a dad that doesn't know to like research it and just decides to internalize that something's wrong and I'm going to get anxious about it, um, will not get to that point and looking at it as a gift. Like, and even with me, who's I do leadership for a living, and now I'm doing all this work for dads. It took me like 3 days of being like, oh, geez, like, what am I gonna? And before I had this aha moment, right? And this is why these
Beautiful.
conversations are so important. This is why dads need to talk. This is why all parents need to talk. And I'm super excited because I only think it's getting better and I want to know what the next generation of kids is going to be like. We always discover we screwed them up some way, and I also that's kind of a separate story and blessing that I feel like I've had. One of the things that I talk about is, I remember after getting my diagnosis that I couldn't be a biological dad. I remember being on a beach and I remember just sitting on the beach and crying. And I was crying because I thought to myself, like, I'm going to have a family. I had no doubt that I was going to start a family, but those kids were going to be screwed up when they were teenagers because they were going to go through their typical teenager identity crisis. And I was going to layer on one extra, like, enormous load of crap on top of that. And I just felt like I had failed already basically. And it wasn't till like I had my boys that I realized that that was actually the greatest gift, because one of the biggest challenges around this confidence gap and the shame is that we want to parent in perfection. And I had already gotten past this idea that I was going to be a perfect dad before I even had them, because I had to go through this whole new process of becoming a dad in a different way. And so I think that's actually a little nugget of why the journey for me has ended up where it is now, was because I didn't have to get past this idealized view of perfect dad, perfect parent. I could move right into what the F am I doing wrong and how do I figure this out?
Hmm.
And it's been really quite a blessing, in fact.
I mean, I would say maybe that whole experience also um, caused you just not to take it for granted and to think like you really wanted this so badly, and then to be told, yeah, it might not be in the cards for you, right? And so you're going to have to work extra hard. Um, I think it probably is part of that would be my hunch. I mean, obviously it's your story, but I'm like, what a gift to come into fatherhood with this much awareness and intention. And, um, and I have found, because I've been, as I've been working, doing the work that I do for the last, well, officially 15 years, but really I've been at it for over 2 decades. I've been building the plane as I fly it the whole time.
Sure.
Right. So my kids are now, my youngest is just started his sophomore year in college. So I'm at that place of like the fruits of my labor, like it is done. It's gravy train now. Like it is, um, I wrote a piece yesterday that I'm putting on Substack that was like, it's mostly just like flowy and fun, and like they are my three besties. They are the people, like, my husband and I, we're each other's true besties, but like these three people, when they come into contact with us, my daughter's coming in late tonight and she's going to be in town for a few days. Like he knows that she's here. Like we're both buying, like, we're like, oh my gosh, she's the popular girl. We just want to be with her. We just want to be with her, like. And we'll be with my son in 2 weeks, who's in school in California. We're gonna fly out there and be with him. It'll be the same thing, we'll, because we're like, I got you all the time. We're looking at each other. We can take each other for granted. We're just like wanting to be with them because we're obsessed with them. And but during the years of growing them, it was stressful. There were so many challenges. People have had to go to therapy for mistakes that, we made, or things that happened when, we weren't, I mean, like, there is no perfection. And I think that it's been, I think that people want to learn. They do not want to learn from perfect people. They want to learn from real people who understand me too. And like, I don't have all the answers. I might be like one or two steps ahead of you, but I like to say, whatever my community is experiencing, we are co-creating it together. And the fact that, like, you have these programs and you're starting this community, you've started this community, and you still have a 5 and an 8-year old, and you're going through things all the time. I think that is the best way to grow a community, in my opinion.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And it reminds me, so we had one session, there was 25 dads in the last Founding Fathers program I ran. And one dad who was a newish dad, I think his son was maybe 7 or 8 months old. We're all on Zoom together, and he's like, "Guys, I just have completely failed. I was responsible for my son, and he fell off the couch." And we're like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, he's 7 months old, and he's suddenly more mobile, and he fell off the couch." And I was like, "Guys, just to help him out, raise your hand if you have dropped your son or daughter." And half the people on the call were raising their hand. And then we were like, "Welcome to the club, my friend. Like, you can move forward now." And it's that sort of thing, right? Like, you need to be around the whole group that are like, "Yeah, you are not the only one who has done this." And it feels great because, God, we care about this responsibility and this blessing more than anything. And there's a lot of emotions that come with it. And, I think particularly for dads, learning how to feel these emotions in a way that gives them strength and not anxiety and not shame and not a whole bunch of negative things, is what they all really it's what we all want. And we just need to have more conversations to make that happen. We need like more opportunities to learn from each other to make that happen. We also need to believe that it's our role to make it happen too. As you know, I think you started off this conversation with, you don't know so many dads that, want to either co-parent or be this expressive or learn this much. And like my response is like, why not? Because I am finding these dads that want to be this way. And it takes, and you're predominantly speaking with moms. So like, you know, get these moms to talk to their husbands, get these husbands to talk to me, like, but also just get them to talk to each other because it's very obvious we're doing better, but we have a long way to go. And I really, really hope that the next time we have this conversation, it's like, oh my God, I'm being inundated with all these dads that are also asking all these same wonderful questions and believe that it's their job to interfere, right? And I mean that in a positive way in all
Mm-hmm.
aspects of growing up, because it is. It really is.
So, yeah, unbelievable. I love it. I love it. I love it. I know my husband just says whenever there's, um, over the years, I'm like, what's wrong with these guys? Like, she knows there's a problem. It's stressful at home. And he's like, parenting program. Why would you need to sign up for something like that? Like, and my husband's like, why don't somebody just needs to tell these guys, if you get on the same page, not only will everybody be happier, you will have more sex. And I'm like, yeah. So I'm not leading with that in my marketing copy. I'm just not. I'm not going to. He's like, I mean, it's true. He's like, nobody wants to sleep with each other when you're at each other's throats, when your kids are a nightmare and everyone's fighting. He's like, these guys need to know they're going to have a lot more sex if they do something like a program like yours or a program like yours. So, that's his take.
I
That's
wonder,
his.
I wonder, I wonder if I can do the before after survey question on that one. It's a great one. I actually tend to believe, as much as that is true, that also we are more successful at work when we are more successful at home with our children and obviously with our spouse, and our spouses are more successful at their work and what they want to be successful in. Like it is such a powerful system, right? If you become a better dad, if you're invested in being more emotionally intelligent and emotionally regulated, it spills over into everything in a positive way. So, yeah, that should be the title of the next
I love
book.
it.
More sex, better job opportunities, and all you have to do is become a great dad.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, let everyone know, because I'm sure this episode's going to be shared with lots of dads. So, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you or to learn more?
Yeah, thank you. So I also have a podcast where I interview dads, and the whole point is to hear about the dirty, messy, beautiful middle that we are all in, trying to be better dads. And so that's the Ambitious Dads podcast. So please check that out. But everything and anything related to the work I do can also just be found on ambitiousdads.com. So please visit there.
I love it. Thanks so much for being here. This is a great conversation.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening today, guys. I hope you picked up some tips, tools, maybe some baby steps for creating more balance and boundaries in your life. And I just wanted to let you know, if you want to continue moving the needle forward in creating this for yourself, having a happier household, I want you to go to my website and check out mastermindparenting.com. We have 3 beginning programs, and if you need some accountability and more support, then please look for the one that would be a good fit for you. And as always, we're on all the social channels under Mastermind Parenting. On Instagram, it's mastermind_parenting. And, periodically I do pop up on different Instagram lives, Facebook lives, where I give you teaching and coaching, and I love engaging with you live to help you help your strong-willed kids so that they can feel better, because when they feel better, they do better. And I love, love, love getting to know you guys. So thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Super, super appreciative.